Well, 2013 certainly hasn't been a season to remember for Razorback fans, but as we head into the final game against LSU today, I want to share with you a story of one fan and former student who pulled off one of the greatest stunts in program history and made November 23rd, 1985 a day that he would never forget. Here's the story of Laddie Diebold. Running through the A is a time-honored tradition at the University of Arkansas, reserved for players, coaches, and honorees of the program. But on November 23rd, 1985, a former student with no ties to the team lived out his dream of running through the A. That man was Laddie Diebold. Laddie was friends with several football players, and the idea came up one day talking with the senior on the team, Brother Alexander.
He had asked me what it felt like to run through the A, and of course I said, it's an awesome feeling. I'm sure every young kid growing up always dreamed of running through the A.
I said, man, I'd give just anything. As a high school football player growing up in Arkansas, I'd give anything just to run through the A one time. He kind of looked at me real funny and he said, "You would?" And I said, "Well, I don't have much, but I'd sure have a good time with it." He said,
"Well, maybe we can make that happen."
I said, "Well, hold on. If we do it, I have to be 56. That's the only number I've ever been in my life. If you can get 56, we're in." Well, he came over the next day and threw a 56 jersey at me and he said, "We're gonna do it."
The plan was to sneak Laddie into the locker room as the team got off the bus.
Freddie Childress, Donnie Centers, those guys were looking out for me and they said, "Hey, come on, get in line with us. We got you." And we walked down the middle of the field into the Broyles Complex.
Throughout the week, Brother collected parts of the uniform from red shirts and injured players for Laddie to wear on game day.
Brother sent Greg Wingfield and Al Thomas to take me upstairs to get dressed. And I didn't know what was waiting on me, but when I got there, everything was laid out in my locker. I had high-top turf shoes, a great helmet. They taped my wrist.
Brother also got their friend Claude Cousins a sideline pass to take pictures on this very special day.
In retrospect, it's one of the silliest things I've ever heard come out of university. You always hear all kinds of crazy stories, but who in the world would think to have somebody sneak in the north end zone and run through the A and be a part of the team when he'd never played it down in football or no member of the coaching staff had ever heard of him?
After the pregame prayer, the moment Laddie had been waiting for had finally arrived.
I remember Laddie right before we went out, before they lifted the door, and it was loud out there, as you can imagine, from the screaming fans, and the A was formed. And I turned around, looked at Laddie, and his eyes were just wide open. He was just fired up and excited. And I said, "Well, Laddie, you got two ways you can go. You can go the long way or the short way."
I said, "Brother, this is my only chance. I'm going the long way, baby."
Then, in front of 51,000 screaming fans, Laddie Diebold, a former student living out his dream, made the run of his life.
It wasn't but a second, and the doors came up. And Donnie Centers was right there, and he was going to run right behind me after he knew I was going the long way.
Oh my God, here comes Laddie through the A. He actually did it. We're all going to the NCAA jail.
The turf felt so spongy, and I was feeling so high, I felt like my knees were going to hit my chin. That was the feeling that I had at the time. I'll never forget that feeling. I couldn't run any faster or any higher. It was just unbelievable.
After the run, it was time for kickoff, and at this point, there was no turning back.
Brother said, "Don't have eye contact with the coaches, you'll be fine."
And here he is on the sideline, stepping up behind the coaches, watching the ball game from the sideline. And the coaches were scared to look at him because they didn't recognize him. So they'd take a sneak peek at him and turn around and wouldn't give him any more attention at all because they didn't know who in the heck he was.
He made himself a part of the team that day. He gelled into the sidelines, and he was the biggest cheerleader on the sideline.
As the first quarter passed, the Hogs were in a tight battle with SMU, and at the end of the half, Laddie decided it was time to go back to the stands, where he was greeted by cheers from his fellow students.
It was unbelievable. And of course, I wore my jersey up in the stands. Took all the other stuff off. I may have kept my tape on my wrist, but everyone was glad to see me, and it was high fives all over. And it was a great day of celebration, mainly because we won the game too. That was the important part. I mean, no one wanted to be a distraction and lose a game. And the fact that we pulled it off, went to a bowl after that, that was great.
Some would call this one of the greatest stunts ever pulled in Razorback history. But for these guys, it was just about showing one devout fan what it felt like to be part of the team that day.
I just thought it was a great thing that someone that had not played for the university to experience what it would be to run out through the A.
They're great pictures. We look back 25 years later and still giggle about it, and no one believes we could ever pull that off.
Only Laddie could have done this. I don't think anyone else at the university at the time I was up there would have fit the part any better than Laddie Debo.
And I want to thank all those guys for sharing that story with me. I know it was the first time they've ever shared it on camera that's been broadcast, and we certainly had a lot of fun reminiscing about the story. Some great pictures to prove that Laddie Diebold made that run through the A.